Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 485, and today's date is October 6, 2014, and the title of this episode is False Flag Warning, Khorasan Terrorist Group is Back, and a U.S. attack is imminent. Now, we understand Khorasan is completely made up. They were going into Syria after the Islamic State, and they say they bombed another terrorist group, and they just called them Khorasan. And we have to remember, Khorasan also refers to a region in Iran, which is the northern part of Iran, and we can see how they're trying to link this somehow, some way. We also understand that they were saying that this group was going to attack the United States using airplanes, just like 9/11. And we understand MH370 is still missing, but there is an identical plane in the Israeli hangars. The only difference is that plane is a long-range version. We also understand there are a couple of planes missing from Libya, and we can see right now they're using this to get boots on the ground inside Syria to say, Khorasan has attacked, and we need to go inside Syria to get these terrorists. Bombing is just not enough. And this is all in preparation to go after Assad eventually, because what they're doing is they're completely annihilating their infrastructure, and they're removing grain silos, refineries owned by people inside Syria. They are bombing the military air bases, so the Syrian armed forces can't take control of these areas, and they're completely wiping out the northeastern part of Syria. And eventually what they're going to do is they're going to put a no-fly zone in this area. And of course, what's the reason for a no-fly zone? Pretty much to get rid of the Syrian Air Force, so this way when they go in to get Assad, they won't have to deal with that. Because right now the Islamic State doesn't have an Air Force, so there'd be no reason to put a no-fly zone. But we can see how they're maneuvering and pushing their way and strategically trying to set everything up so they can go after Assad. And we can see these warnings now are coming out saying that yes, there is a threat to the United States, and we are definitely going to see some type of false flag event occur here, and it will bring us to Syria with boots on the ground going after Assad, and this whole thing will go red hot with World War III. And we can see they are definitely planning and pushing in this direction. Let's get into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand Europe is pretty much in a full-blown depression at this point in time. We're seeing German industrial orders have tumbled in August by their largest amount since the height of the global financial crisis in 2009. Data from the German economy ministry showed contracts plunged 5.7% on the month. The German economy shrank by 0.2% in the second quarter, and some economists have warned it could contract again in the third quarter. So it's really not looking that great. And in the Eurozone, we're seeing the same exact thing. Things are just completely falling apart. Sentiment in the Eurozone dropped for a third consecutive month in October, hitting its lowest level since May 2013, suggesting the single currency bloc will fall into a recession. Well, a lot of the countries, as we know, are already in a depression. Some of them are in recession, and others are teetering on a recession, but we see the whole thing really starting to fall apart right now. We see France right now not implementing austerity on the people, and of course, the Eurozone is really pissed off about this, that they're not doing what they want. And again, there's the people inside France saying no to the government. You better not put more austerity or we're coming after you and removing you. And then the government has to deal with the Eurozone leaders saying, yes, you need to do this. You have to do this. And we're starting to get into this point where things are starting to really start to fall apart in all of these countries because the people are rallying up, and the central bankers want it a certain way. We see Spain, we see the whole Eurozone having police, Spain purchasing rioting gear. We see England, London purchasing water cannons, getting ready for riots. And they understand when this thing starts to fall apart, it's going to really come down really fast. Here in the States, what we're seeing is more layoffs. HP is laying off another 5,000 people. It looks like HP might even be split up. Lloyd's Banking Group, 1,000 more jobs to be laid off here. We're looking at USIS, 1,200 jobs there. Nestle, we're looking at 100 jobs. Sprint just announced there's going to be a new round of layoffs coming. So we're seeing layoffs starting to pick up. A lot of people are going to be unemployed. And HP has laid off, I think the total now is about 55,000 people that they're up to at this point, and all these people are going to need jobs, and where are they going to find them? Because those people that worked in HP would like to go to Dell, Sony, but all those companies are laying off, and there are hiring freezes, and we're seeing the tech industry really starting to remove personnel, cut back, and this is really moving forward throughout the industry. Now, of course, the Fed is out there, the Federal Reserve, and they're saying that the U.S. labor market recovery is quickening in September. Things look great. Unemployment down to 5.9%, and they're saying from all their indicators it looks like we're in a full steam recovery. Everything looks great. On track to raise interest rates. Who knows? The first month in 2015, the first quarter of 2015, and of course, we all know this. If they raise rates, real estate is going to come tumbling down. All those people who've taken out loans for other things are going to completely crash, especially those people who have taken out adjustable rate mortgages. Things are just going to fall apart. We saw this back in 2007, 2008, when interest rates started to move up. What happened? All those people who had ARMs, adjustable rate mortgages, everything just started to fall apart. Now, SWIFT right now saying that they will not bow to pressure to disconnect Russia from the international transactions. It has no authority to make unilateral sanctions decisions. SWIFT regrets the pressure as well as the surrounding media speculation, both of which risk undermining the systematic character of these services that SWIFT provides its customers around the world. As a utility with a systematic global character, it has no authority to make sanction decisions. Currently, Russia is now, of course, as we know, working on its own SWIFT type of system that will replace SWIFT. Russia is also working with China to set up its international rating agencies separate from the big three, which is Fitch, Standard & Poor's, and Moody's. So they're looking to still move away from the Western banking system framework, and they want to create their own just in case something else happens. Like we move into World War III, this is why they're trying to be self-contained at this point with China and other nations, and they really don't want to pretty much depend on the private Western central bank countries. Now, it looks like a lot of countries now are starting to push the theme of pretty much getting rid of free speech on the internet. Now, we understand that Dianne Feinstein has a bill floating around saying, listen, we will have only journalists that we approve that will be allowed to report the news. All those others, the independent media, bloggers, vloggers, no. They have to go through the government. They have to get credentials. Otherwise, they cannot report the news. The UK, as we understand, is also saying, listen, all those people who want to report the news who are not working with the government but are talking against the government will have to get whatever they want to put through, their articles, their videos. It will have to be approved by the government. Turkey now is saying the same thing, that Erdogan is saying, I am increasingly against the internet every day. John Kerry is out there saying the internet makes it very hard to govern. And we know why all of this is happening. It's not because it's hard to govern because of the internet. It's hard to lie to the people. Remember Erdogan? He got caught trying to create that false flag event with Syria because people caught him on audio tape. It was posted on Twitter, it was posted on YouTube, and he tried to ban all of that. The same thing was happening in UK, where the video of the beheadings was being questioned, and they said, listen, if you look at that video, you are a terrorist, and they were trying to push that. See, all of this is not in their favor, and this is why the US, UK, Turkey, and many other countries are trying to get rid of the internet, because they can't stand the independent media, they can't stand the bloggers, the vloggers, all out there pretty much catching them on their lies, and they don't know how to get around this. And the only way they know how to get rid of it is to really get rid of it, and that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to remove this so they can continually lie to their people and try to convince you, yes, we're doing the right thing and we're protecting you. Okay, now with Ebola, it seems like there's a petition out there, and the petition was launched on the White House website looking for an FAA ban for all incoming flights and outgoing flights to Ebola-stricken countries. Right now, it seems like there's 4,000 signatures on this petition, and it's continually moving up, and we'll have to see where this goes. There is also estimates from scientists out there saying that 75% chance Ebola will reach France by the end of October, and 50% for UK, and they're seeing that, because of the way everyone's flying around the world, that they can definitely see this really hit these countries. We've seen it hit the United States with about 6 people or so at this time. We're also seeing Ebola hit Spain. There's a nurse who last month treated a priest in Madrid, and now she's contracted Ebola. So we can see right now that it is moving from country to country, and people are getting infected from this virus. And we can see that there were 6 people here in the United States. There was the NBC cameraman. There was the Liberian in Dallas, which was Thomas Eric Duncan. We also see the Emory patient, an unnamed American who contracted Ebola in West Africa, is being treated at an isolation unit at Emory University Hospital in Atlanta. We have 3 missionaries in the summer. 3 Americans contracted Ebola while working for a Christian missionary organization in Liberia, and they were flown to the United States for treatment and then later released. An American doctor remains under observation at the National Institute of Health in Bethesda, Maryland, outside of Washington. So there are many different cases, and there's many, many people calling in saying, oh, they might have symptoms, but a lot of them are just suspects. They really aren't confirmed. And of course, when people have temperatures or they're throwing up, they believe they have it, and they really don't. But they call in just to be tested and to make sure they don't. So from all of this, what are we seeing? Well, we're seeing that they might bring in more advanced screening into the airports. So, of course, now they pat you down. And now they might be bringing in a device where it will take your temperature to see if you are burning up with a fever as you come into the airports or leave the airports. But, of course, you can get around this by taking aspirin, ibuprofen. It will bring your temperature down. So these scanners are kind of worthless. They're not going to really tell you anything because, of course, when you feel hot or you feel like you have a temperature, what's the first thing you do? You take an ibuprofen or you take an aspirin to get rid of it, and it lowers the temperature, and you walk through with absolutely no problem. Now, it looks like the regulators in the United States have approved an experimental drug for treating patients suffering from Ebola, and we can see right now this, the drug maker is, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, Chimerex, announced that the U.S. Federal Drug Administration has approved their drug to treat Ebola symptoms. And of course, they really haven't really tested this, and we can see where this is leading. Eventually, what they're going to want to do is have mass vaccinations, and we can see already they're starting to approve drugs that haven't really been tested fully. And I can tell you right now, I am not getting this whatsoever. I rather use colloidal silver and other treatments to try to protect myself because I do not trust this vaccine that hasn't been tested anywhere whatsoever. And again, this strain of Ebola, you have a 50-50 chance at this point. And just from the government blocking deliveries down into West Africa and hiding all their papers about colloidal silver, I'll take my chances with colloidal silver at this time. But it's starting to look like that experts are now coming out and they're coming to the conclusion that they may have to start doing large amounts of vaccines and a large vaccine type of program to really stop Ebola in West Africa. And of course that then will move to the US, it will move to Spain, UK, pretty much every single country, and we can see this go throughout the world doing this. But don't worry, President Obama is on top of all this. The White House is taking precautions. They got the whole government approach on this thing. President Obama is still not considering flight bans on trips to Ebola-stricken countries. There's a whole government approach that the administration is pursuing, and this is coming from the spokesman from Obama's administration, Department of Health and Human Services and Center for Disease Controls were among the agencies working together to protect the United States from full Ebola breakout. Obama had deployed military forces to bring relief to Ebola victims in Africa. Excuse me, but military personnel, 4,000 military soldiers down in Liberia, does not help the Ebola situation. More doctors, more medical equipment, a person with a gun is not going to help the situation. The only situation that helps is to pretty much overthrow the government and take the country over. But what we're seeing right now, if Obama really wants to stop the inflow of Ebola, they can pretty much, close the borders. Hey, that would be one way. Make sure that everyone has mandatory testing to make sure that there are no Ebola victims coming in. And we can see from what they have done already with this Thomas Edward Duncan. I mean, he threw up on a sidewalk. He was in contact with many other people. He took many different flights while he was infected. And they haven't really tested that many people, and they were cleaning the sidewalk with a power washer. And this whole thing should have been cordoned off, and there should be no one allowed in this area, but it was just someone with a everyday power washer squirting it all over the place. And we can see that this whole thing is not going to go well if we keep this up. And again, this is a virus. It can get out of control. Of course, as we know, this is most likely weaponized by the government to be used in West Africa for a certain purpose. And of course, it could have gotten out of control, just like all viruses do, and they could be spreading all over the place. Now, of course, they could also use this to declare martial law, to get rid of our rights. And it doesn't even have to be a full breakout. It just has to be the scare of it. And we can see it's already starting. We can see in Texas, where kids are going to school, they don't want to touch each other. And we can see how this could be really it could be pushed out there as a scare type of tactic, a false flag type of tactic, to convince everyone that yes, we need to pretty much declare medical martial law. We need you all vaccinated. We need to keep control of everything, so we have to suspend the Constitution, your rights, and everything like that. And you can see what direction they're trying to move in, because if they were really trying to stop this, they would have come out and closed the borders. Flights would have been stopped from these countries, but it seems like they're very, very lax in their approach to this. Okay, now in Hong Kong, we see the protesters, it's starting to die down a little bit. A lot of the protesters are starting to withdraw. It looks like they're exhausted from sitting out there, and it's not getting the momentum the U.S. would hope it would get, and it's starting to die down a little bit. It looks like the Hong Kong government is going to hold its first talks with the protesters, and they're going to talk about this, but it might not even come to the part where they have to talk, because a lot of the protesters are leaving many of the areas. They're not even blocking the buildings anymore, and it seems like this is starting to fall apart completely. But what's very interesting, and this is coming from Tomato Bubble, who put this together, 12 different steps how you can create this type of uprising in a country. And step 1, dispatch your CIA MI6 Mossad agents to the target nation. Use various covers such as exchange student, tourist, aid worker, businessman, journalist, diplomat. Step 2, use the humanitarian guise of pro-democracy or human rights to start up your NGO, non-governmental organizations inside of the target nation. Provide cover for yourself by doing actual good works while building up your NGO with local malcontents. Step 3, recruit your network of domestic traders, target intellectuals, academics, politicians, journalists, and if possible, military men. Use bribery to target those who can be bought. Use blackmail to target those who have some stain in their private life. If bribery doesn't work, use blackmail. Step 4, if the target nation has a large labor union, corrupt the labor bosses. They'll be happy to cooperate. Step 5, pick a catchy theme or color for your revolution. Examples include Prague Spring, Czechoslovakia 1968, Velvet Revolution, Eastern Europe 1989, Saffron Revolution, Myanmar, Cedar Revolution, Lebanon. Rose Revolution, Georgia. Orange Revolution, Ukraine. Green Revolution, Iran. Arab Spring, Egypt. Libya, and Hong Kong's Umbrella Revolution. So just pick something out there that's pretty catchy. Step 6, kick off your revolution with a spontaneous protest. Use your CIA agents and their controlled NGO to make allegations of human rights abuses or government corruption or election fraud. Step 7, roll out your spontaneous banners and protest signs written in English. And if you notice, almost all the signs that they're using in Ukraine, in Hong Kong, in all these countries where English is not the first language, the signs are always in English, which is very strange, and we know why they're doing it, because after all, you're trying to manipulate the American policymakers and the gullible American public. Step 8, turn up the heat on the target government. This will swell the ranks of the protesters to include malcontents, people with legitimate grievances, bandwagon types, and folks who are just bored and want something to do. Step 9, the major American and European media outlets will now assist you by portraying the uprising as a popular spontaneous reaction to corruption, tyranny, and voter fraud. Step 10, now that the world is watching, stage an incident. If you can manipulate some fanatic into setting himself on fire, do so. If you can fake an atrocity, fake it with blood, fake it with tear gas, Photoshop the images, make it look really good. Step 11, add in your violent agent provocateurs. Use them to force the police into violent acts. This will embarrass, intimidate, and destabilize the government to the point where it becomes delegitimized in the eyes of the world community. Step 12, add in your traitor, politician, and wait for the U.S., UN, and EU to pressure the oppressive target government into submission. The threat of economic sanctions, no-fly zones, bombing, or even an armed rebel uprising should convince the government to either bend to your wishes or to step down and call for new elections. So we can see this is the 12-step plan that the United States central bankers have been using in every single one of these countries. Now, it looks like out in Ukraine, Yatsenyuk paid the gas bill, but he really didn't. He got confused, and it looks like he did a repayment of Eurobonds, and he said he was paying the gas bill, and it looks like there's a little bit of confusion, and he still owes money to Gazprom, so their gas is not turned on just yet. Now, Russia's Security Council is out there, and they are saying, yes, the Ukraine ceasefire is very, very fragile. It seems like there's individual gang groups going around still fighting, breaking the ceasefire, and it is on both sides. NATO is very concerned about the numerous violations in the ceasefire in the east of Ukraine. The ceasefire is important. It is a reason for concern that we see so many violations of the ceasefire. Both the Kiev forces and independence fighters have been accusing each other of violating the ceasefire, and we can see that this is continually spreading and it's not stopping, and this is very fragile. One wrong move, this thing can go out of whack, and there could be fighting again in Ukraine, and this is exactly what the central bankers want. They want the fighting to go forth. They want to take back the southeastern section and Crimea, because the bankers did not get what they paid for. They wanted the entire country. Now, NATO was out there, and the new NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said that NATO can deploy wherever it wants. And it looks like it was taking out of context the translation in Poland, and they're trying to backtrack right now, saying, no, this is not what they said. But of course, as you can see, that NATO is definitely getting prepared and moving military assets to prepare for World War III and attacks and interaction with Russia. And you can see they've been doing this for quite a long time. Now, it looks like the U.S. Navy has successfully completed a test mission for an autonomous unmanned boats, just like a drone. Now, it looks like we have drone boats that can protect a bigger ship or a swarm an enemy target with a coordinated kamikaze attack, and they don't need people inside these boats. They're just these small type of rafts that they equip with all the equipment. They can drive them around just like the drones. They can weaponize them, and they can use them, and it takes no personnel whatsoever. Now, it looks like the United States is sending in Apache helicopters to Iraq to battle the Islamic State, or should I say the tribes who are rising up in Iraq, because that's who they're really battling. They're using Islamic State as a cover story, just like they used Al-Qaeda as a cover story, where they were actually fighting the people of the country, just like in Ukraine. As soon as the puppet government was put into place, those people who were against the puppet government, they were then called the terrorists. The same thing is happening right now. They're using the Islamic State to pretty much create confusion in the area, because the tribes in Iraq, in Libya, Lebanon, and Yemen, they're all rising up. They want their country back. Now, it seems like there was a secret document that was found and reported by Britain's Sunday Times, and it is believed to have been written by Abdullah Ahmed Meshadini, a member of the highly secretive six-man war cabinet of the terrorist group which wants to build an Islamic State. So they found this secret thing, and what it says is that and who was actually the Iraqi special forces. They found this. It was it was in a raid that they did on a home of a senior Islamic State member, and they found these documents just like they found the laptops. And they just leave it out in the open. They, no encryption, nothing. They just, whoever wants to see it can see it. But there was a 70-point plan, provides an insight into their big plan that they want to do. And it seems like some of it says that this is what they're looking to do. One of the goals listed in the document is to offer Russia access to oil fields in Iraq, in the Anbar province, in exchange for Moscow severing ties with Tehran and sharing secret nuclear technology known to Iran with the Islamic State. The bribe is also meant to convince the Russian government to stop supporting Syrian President Assad, an ally with Sunni states of the Arab Gulf in their confrontation with Iran and Syria. Now, this was completely planted. And who has this motivation? That's right, Israel and the United States, UK, and other nations. And you can see right now, this is complete propaganda to implicate Russia, to make it look like, yes, this is that Iran has nuclear weapons, because they're pointing that out, how they should align themselves to get rid of Assad. So you can see this is pure propaganda. This is just laid out there to make people think that Iran has nuclear weapons, that they were trying to make deals with Russia, and this is just something that Israel, the United States, UK, all went in on to try to create this ridiculous propaganda and put it out there and try to convince people that this is something that's real. Now, ex-Pentagon Chief Panetta, he is saying that this Islamic State war might go 30 years or longer. I mean, we're in it for the long haul here. And what they're really trying to say, and what they continually say, that why they're saying this is going to be such a long-out battle with the Islamic State, what they're trying to get everyone used to is going to war, and this is not going to end soon, because they understand they have to really push the agenda of World War III, and this was going to last for quite a while. The fight against the Islamic State group will be difficult and could last decades due to the decisions made by President Obama, and this is coming from Pentagon Chief Leon Panetta. I think we're looking at a kind of a 30-year war that could extend to threats in Libya, Nigeria, Somalia, Yemen, and Lebanon. Isn't that interesting? It's all the countries that they either want to go back into or want to get into. And we can see that it's completely falling apart. All he had to do is add in Pakistan, and it would be pretty much complete there. So you can see, you understand what they're trying to do here. They're going to go back into each one of these countries. They included Nigeria, which they really want to get into, and of course Boko Haram's there, and of course that's completely made up, and they're trying to use the terrorist card to get into Nigeria. And you can see Yemen, Libya, Lebanon, they're all, Somalia. They just had to add Pakistan, and the whole thing would have been complete. So this is their mission. Their mission is to go back into each one of these countries, go into Syria and Iran, because this has been their goal all along. Now, it looks like Saudi Arabia has begun training Sunni rebels in the war against Assad. Diplomatic sources said the Gulf Cooperation Council Kingdom has been hosting thousands of Sunni rebels for military training. The sources said some 5,000 recruits have arrived from Syria, Turkey, and other countries for a course that could last between 4 and 6 months. The source said that the Saudi training program was supposed to be was supported by the United States. Under the program, the Saudi military would train up to 15,000 Sunni rebels for the war in Syria. The sources said the rebels would then be sent to Jordan, and then they would move into Turkey, and then they would go right into Syria. So you can see the training has already started. They're going to get Assad. They're getting ready to do this. Now, we know that JP Morgan was attacked, and pretty much JP Morgan is not going to be notifying everyone if your account was attacked. And it looked like they didn't get any type of information than your name, address, and phone number, which is kind of public anyhow. It's already out there. But the big thing is that, yes, they're blaming this on Russia, and they're saying that, yes, we've confirmed it, that they might have done this in retaliation to the sanctions the U.S. imposed on Russia. So they're building this up quite a bit. And we also see the FBI has warned that Chinese hackers have embarked on a widespread campaign to hit all the different companies here in the United States. He said there are two kinds of big companies in the United States. There are those who have been hacked by the Chinese and those who don't know they've been hacked by the Chinese. So we're getting Russia and China right now. They're demonizing them, letting everyone know, yes, these are the two big players that will be hitting our financial institutions and our corporations here in the United States. So when you see things start to go down, you know exactly where it's coming from. Now, ex-Homeland Security Chief says, this is coming from Tom Ridge, the first Homeland Security Chief under President George W. Bush, says companies face more risk of cyber attacks similar to those struck by JP Morgan. And he's saying that more companies are going to be getting hit like this. The power infrastructure is vulnerable at this time, and what we have seen is the sophistication of these attacks continue to elevate, and they're going to get worse as time goes on. So they're just prepping us for what is coming, and we understand that this false flag event is building right now. They're getting their story together, trying to convince us that it's coming from Russia, China. This is where the cyber attacks are coming from. We have the Islamic State, we have Khorasan, and we also have Ebola. So this is going to be a multi-pronged, huge type of attack, and we've already had propaganda that the Islamic State is going to try to infect themselves, run across the border, and try to infect as many people as they possibly can with Ebola. Now, there's more information coming out and more propaganda, and of course we all know this is going to be an inside job because they have to convince the American people and other people in all the different countries to go to war. And the only way to do this is to create a bad guy, a boogeyman out there, and this is exactly what they're doing, and they have to make it look like they attacked the United States, and they have to convince you that they did, and they have to do this, and they have to build a story, and this is what they're doing. They're saying the militant group, the Islamic State, is planning to send its terrorists to European countries in the guise of refugees. Terrorists disguised as refugees are planning to enter Turkey first and then travel to Western Europe countries such as Germany for the purpose of carrying out attacks. This way they can get on planes, they can fly to different countries, and they are refugees. So you can see how they're starting to build this up. Now, the head of the FBI right now says the United States is preparing for an imminent terrorist attack by al-Qaeda's alleged affiliate in Syria, the Khorasan group. And of course, this is the new group that they created out of thin air, and they're going to hit us with some type of plane attack. Many of the suspected leaders and members of the group managed to escape the September 22nd air raids, and this is coming from 3 U.S. officials that cannot be named. The FBI director said the group was working on a plan to carry out terrorist attacks against the United States using airliners to hit into different cities. Khorasan was working and may still be working on effort to attack the United States or our allies, and looking to do it very, very soon. So you can see they are pushing this as hard as they can. And he went on to say, given our visibility, we know they're serious people bent on destruction, and so we have to act as if it's coming tomorrow. Khorasan militants did not travel to Syria to fight the government of Assad, but rather they were sent by Al-Qaeda leader Zaharai to recruit Europeans and Americans whose passports allow them to board a U.S.-bound airliner with less scrutiny from security officials. So we can see right now this is definitely getting planned. They're building the story to convince everyone that, yes, this Khorasan group is coming to the United States. And, of course, they're saying the attack is imminent because they want to pretty much use the UN Charter, which will satisfy the UN Charter, which will allow the use of force without authorization in case of imminent threat to the United States. Now, they don't have to prove anything. They just have to say it's imminent. They don't know if it's really happening because, again, they're the ones who are creating this. So we can see right now we are getting prepped for a false flag event. And when they want this war to go hot, what they're going to do is they're going to create this multi-prong event. Now we can see this coupled with Ebola, they could declare martial law. They can lock down and get rid of your rights. They can hit a couple of cities to make it look like it's coming from the Khorasan group inside Syria. We can then see Russia and China hitting the financial system to bring it to its knees because they've been telling us we're in this recovery and they don't want to take the blame for it. They're trying to pretty much pass the buck onto another country or group to say they're the ones who created this economic collapse. It wasn't us. We were bringing you into a recovery. And when we see the whole system start crumbling down, what's going to happen is they're going to come out and say, listen, we're going to start the stimulus again. We're going to save the economy. We're going to try to pump it up, and the government is going to be out there, and Obama's going to be out there saying that yes, the Federal Reserve, we have given them the go-ahead. They're going to try to save the economy. We're going to have to get those terrorists that brought our economy down and ruined the way of life here and our freedoms, and we can see how they're going to try to force the American people to go to war. And again, at this point, we're going to have to call them out on it, and we have to all rise up at the same exact time all across the world and say, we know what you're doing. We know this is a false flag event. We know it was you. We know we were in a collapse situation, and all of this is your fault. And if you'd like to go fight this war, go right ahead. You can get on the transport planes, go right to the front lines, bring your families, and good luck with that. Here we'll be rebuilding the United States. Other people in their countries will be rebuilding their countries, and we really need to start calling them out on it when the time comes. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.